guys, welcome to the Is AI Coming for Your Job podcast. I am your host, Jack Forrester. If you're listening to this podcast, you, like me, may have wondered, is AI coming for your job, or how secure is my job in the wake of AI? Or even, how long do I have left to work? I'll be talking about the current state of AI as I understand it, the threat of AI's role to work as we can best understand it, and what the future of work may look like. But first, I want to start with the letter very recently published in the AI community. Quote, artificial intelligence systems with human competitive intelligence can pose profound risks to society and humanity, as shown by extensive research and acknowledged by top AI labs. As stated in the widely endorsed Asilomar AI principles, advanced AI could represent a profound change in the history of human life on Earth and should be planned for and managed with commensurate care and resources. Unfortunately, this level of planning and management is not happening, even though recent months have seen AI labs locked in an out-of-control race to develop and deploy ever more powerful digital minds that no one, not even their creators, can understand, predict, or reliably control. Contemporary AI systems are now becoming human competitive at general task, and we must ask ourselves, should we let machines flood our information channels with propaganda and untruth? Should we automate away all the jobs, including the fulfilling ones? Should we develop non-human minds that might eventually outnumber, outsmart, obsolete, and replace us? Should we risk loss of control of our civilization? Such decisions must not be delegated to unelected tech leaders. Powerful AI systems should be developed only once we are confident that their effects will be positive and their risk will be manageable. This confidence must be well justified and increased with the magnitude of a system's potential effects. OpenAI's recent statement regarding artificial general intelligence states that at some point, it may be important to get independent review before starting to train future systems, and for the most advanced efforts to agree to limit the rate of growth of compute used for creating new models. We agree. That point is now, end quote. This open letter was published and endorsed by various signatories in late March 2023. Signers included Elon Musk of Tesla, Twitter fame, Steve Wozniak of Apple fame, Andrew Yang, former presidential candidate, various esteemed AI researchers, and others. This letter is significant for multiple reasons. One, it shows that those at the forefront of technological innovation are aware of the risk associated with AI. And two, the signers are convinced that if steps aren't taken in the short term, the risk associated with AI will become more probable. As this podcast's name suggests, we'll be focusing our efforts on AI as it relates to work. Artificial intelligence seems still to many like a foreign concept from a sci-fi novel or movie. It still seems very far off and abstract. In my own experience and discussions with friends and coworkers, I think the bulk of people are largely oblivious that AI is here, it's on the move, but even more so are oblivious to the impact of the AI that's coming. I myself have struggled to process how the future of AI and my work will impact me and my family. Many of us don't even realize that we are already using a form of AI in our daily lives. Facial recognition, selected posts and advertisements in your social media feed, Netflix suggestions that seem to be all too customized are examples of narrow artificial intelligence. In the next episode, we'll discuss narrow AI more thoroughly, along with much more concerning forms of AI. AI generally has negative connotations associated with it, largely because of media. Movies and books that contain AI subject matter are typically dystopic and bleak with less than optimal outcomes. It's hard not to paint that picture when the world could quite literally end at the hands of a powerful AI or multiple AIs competing against each other. The letter discussed at the beginning of this podcast was a call to stop AI development for 6 months so that safeguards or parameters could be built into AI systems to ensure AI remains benevolent for society. I don't know if it's practical to expect an AI lab to stop work on AI when it's their business. There's no governing body to facilitate such a stop in AI research. There is a tremendous amount of incentive for AI development. Those first to market with compelling AI tools will reap the most rewards. For that reason, I don't think we can expect a stop. I suppose we need to talk about some risk with AI, or concerns around AI. Things are progressing at a very fast pace. We're about to enter a time where it's going to be impossible to tell the difference between an AI generated video or picture and a traditional video or picture. You don't have to think about this very long to think about all the ways this could go wrong. Google recently unveiled a text to video technology in which you can simply type into a prompt, "horse runs on the beach," or any prompt you wish to see, and a video will be generated of that very thing. You can refine that video as much as you want to get it to where you want it. Maybe horse runs on the beach in the morning or something to that effect. Google has safeguards built in this text to video technology so that humans cannot be used in this technology. That's a brilliant move by Google and a safe one for consumers. But what sort of safeguard is in place for lesser known AI labs doing this very same technology? There's none. So we're depending really on the goodness of those folks in those AI labs to come up with those safeguards themselves. But you can bet that there will be nefarious actors who will start, and probably have already started, using people's likeness or image to create less than flattering pictures or videos of people. And it wouldn't take much to ruin someone's life with an AI generated picture or video. Or think about an artificially created video of a world leader with a shocking or alarming message about the end of the world, or financial markets, or anything to that effect. You don't have to go too far to a situation in which you cause destabilization across the globe. Or let's think about text to audio technology. If someone can record your voice or my voice and have the same voice artificially generated, what's to stop nefarious actors from using that to take advantage of myself or folks in my circle? There's really nothing. I think about a concerned parent who will one day receive a call from what they think is their child asking for large sums of money for whatever emergency they may have. Now, you may say that you, as a parent, can tell the difference between your child's voice and that of a voice created by a computer, quote unquote, but this technology will shatter that ability. You won't be able to tell the difference between your child's voice and one replicated by AI. Of course, with that comes, you can preserve your child's voice for the future. So in the event of the unspeakable, you could have conversations with an AI who has your child's voice. Creepy as it may sound, that's something we'll also think about in the future with AI technology. So these are really only 2 points: the text to video, text to audio technology that represent a good warning, I guess, for how AI could go wrong. I should take a moment to mention that it's generally thought of by AI researchers that there is tremendous potential for AI as it relates to breakthroughs in healthcare, the potential for wealth creation, and answers to complex problems such as climate change. These are the upsides that AI labs, AI creators, futurist technologists, these are the points that they want to drive home. Of course, there are, to their credit, some folks, like Elon is probably at the forefront of blowing the whistle on the dangers of AI. But most of these folks are financially incentivized. So there's a sort of a conflict of interest where you're creating this technology that can change the world. you may be tempted to skirt ethical or moral dilemmas that you may not have otherwise, because reaching the market sooner with this tool will benefit you financially. So, who am I? I'm a husband and I'm a father. I work at a white collar job in corporate America. I'm an avid reader, follow tech news, have been for many years. I would say for AI, I've been following AI for the better part of a decade, at least as well as a layman can. The spark really in my interest came about when I listened to a podcast, I would say back in the early 2010s, in which AI ethics were being discussed as it relates to self-driving cars. An example that was given was, what if a child ran out into the street in front of a self-driving car, an AI-driven car, and that car doesn't have time to stop? Should it A, run over the child, or B, run onto the sidewalk where there's an elderly man who will likely get hurt and likely die? Think about that. What would you do? Now think about your car calculating that decision for you. Does AI have emotions and good judgment? Does AI understand that the old man has already lived most of his life and is the better option for crashing into? Who can make that decision? Or what if it's 2 kids in the street versus 3 kids on the sidewalk? AI would be forced to calculate that decision too. You may make the argument that humans will input what to do in dangerous situations such as that, but who does it? You know, there are inputs going into this AI to make those determinations. So there are people obviously behind this, and how do you get to the right decision? You may think that that's a distant scenario in the future and that it likely won't happen, but if it was your child, would it matter? I think it would. Now, self-driving technology has come a long way in the last decade, and I think if you listen to any technologist or futurist, they will tell you that self-driving cars will be far safer, far superior in safety when it reaches its full potential than humans will ever be. So that's really the best argument for self-driving cars in the future, is to eliminate vehicle fatalities. So my interest in AI really started with that podcast and ethics around AI, and I've made it a habit to follow developments and read on the subject at length since. With recent developments, my anxieties concerning AI have escalated even more. Before I continue, I should make clear that I don't have a technical background or a media background. It's probably going to be obvious by the content of this podcast. I don't have any stake in AI, though we probably should all be investing in AI technologies. And I don't work in that world. I am somewhat tech adjacent in my current job, which we'll talk about more later. My concern with AI is not Terminator style artificial intelligence or killer robots. I think the risk for that is substantial, but it's really not my immediate concern, though maybe it should be. Disinformation is another major concern. I think if the last 5 to 7 years have taught us anything, is that disinformation can be detrimental to societal cohesion. Think about that text to video or text to audio examples given previously. It's not difficult to see the potential for chaos. However, as much of a risk as those things pose to our society, my concern and focus of this podcast will be on AI and its impact on work. So let's jump into it. Now, this may strike a nerve, but I think that most jobs, especially white-collar jobs, have areas of low value and repetitive actions that could be eliminated. Of course, no one wants to hear this about their job, as it makes it sound like their job isn't important, or you're even calling into question the person associated with the job itself. However, I think it still holds true. My position or my job absolutely has low value actions that can be eliminated by technology. This is how AI will be sold to companies initially, and this is how companies will sell the technology to their employees. It's already happening, and it makes sense. So it's generally said that these technologies will free you up to focus on more high value task or work, and you won't have to worry about these smaller actions. However, AI is only going to continue to improve. So right now, it's probably as dumb as it will ever be, and it's already pretty frightening as to what systems can do. So it's going to become more capable by the day. And if you continue to eliminate low value actions for employees long enough, you'll eventually eliminate the bulk of their responsibilities. And at some point, employees won't be worth the money they're being paid, as much of their work has been taken on by technology. And while I'd like to think that corporations are benevolent towards their employees, I'm really not that naive. So, what jobs will be impacted by AI in the short term? Well, I asked an AI to give me a list of jobs that it thought would be most impacted in the short term by AI. And it gave me the following list of 10 jobs or professions that will, quote, likely be replaced by AI in the near future, unquote. So, telemarketers, accountants or tax preparers, insurance underwriters, copywriters, customer service representatives, loan officers, data entry clerks, proofreaders, receptionists, and paralegals round out the 10. Do you know anybody that's in one of these roles currently? I'm guessing you do. Of course, the AI said in its response to my prompt that these jobs would be affected in the near future. Of course, near future is a relative term and could be 2 years or 10 years. It really depends on how quickly the technology is rolled out, regulatory changes, industry specific requirements, further technology advancements, and how fast it can be implemented across the workforce. Something else to think about is people's willingness to embrace the technology. I think corporations will latch onto it quickly, but the individual may not. One example that comes to mind is the software for doing your taxes has existed for decades at this point, and yet people still choose to go to a physical tax preparer for their taxes. So in that regard, tax preparers may not be eliminated in the short term in the way that AI thinks. But there are enough accountants or tax preparers at corporations across the country and in the world that this could impact. And in future episodes, we'll talk about specific trades, these 10 probably that we've hit on here, and how many people work in those fields and how they could be impacted by AI in their field. So what do these trades, this list of 10 professions, have in common? Well, many of them are data-driven, meaning there's not much interfacing needed with other humans to perform that work. For that reason, AI will be able to handle the work more efficiently. If my employer can deploy an AI at scale to execute a task many orders of magnitude faster than it takes me to do so, where do you think that leaves me? And fast forward several years, and there's not a profession that is AI proof. I think if you take it to its logical conclusion, everyone is susceptible in the long term. But it's still very abstract. That's the thing about AI is it's hard to tell. I mean, there are technologists and futurists. I'll use those terms a lot. I already have. But there are people who work in AI, and I think that's how we best define them here. But there are some who think, within the next 2 years, professions like the ones mentioned will be gone as we know them now. They won't exist as we know them now. And others who think it's going to take a bit longer for that to happen. I think my job, it's difficult to say. We'll talk about exactly what I do later on. But there is a significant and certain amount of interfacing I have to do with others, but I think enough of my job could be automated in that I have to be consolidated with another position, so to speak. I don't think they'll be able to justify paying me my current salary when AI has taken on the bulk of the work or a significant part of the work. And that's going to be the case, I think, for many white collar professions. While I like to think that I am a valued employee at my company, I am well aware that no matter what happens, to some extent, I'll always be employee number 0048743. And I interface a lot with directors and VPs in my company, and I have what I would think very good relationships with them. But I can't imagine that they're going to hesitate for a moment when it comes time to pivot to AI. Eliminating labor costs will only look good for them. AI is never going to call in sick. AI doesn't need healthcare benefits or retirement, 401k matching, anything like that. So it's going to be much cheaper and much more efficient. And while I may sound callous about this, I've been thinking about it for several years. So I fully accepted that AI technology is going to be a better performer at my job than me. So in that sense, I have embraced it some. And I think along with that, AI being a much more efficient system and a cheaper system for employers, I think that a global recession, which is some folks say is here now and some folks say is coming, is only going to expedite this technology into companies. When it's hard to turn a profit and you can cut labor, that's exactly what they're going to do. I think with what we've seen over the last few months, which we'll get into in the next few episodes, many white-collar jobs are going to be displaced in the very near future. Again, that's a relative term. It's abstract. It's hard to nail down. But I would say within 2 to 5 years, you're going to start seeing entire professions disappearing, or the bulk of those professions disappearing as it relates to corporations. I think many developers would agree with that and say that AI is abstract and it's impossible to tell what's going to happen in the future. But what is evident and it's generally agreed on is that work will be greatly impacted by AI in the short term. How much so remains a matter of debate. There are pundits who are more skeptical on the impact of work from AI. I wish I shared that skepticism. Like many, I've got a mortgage, I've got bills, and have people depending on me. How will I be able to support my family if I lose my job to AI? A lot of people are going to be asking that question in the future. And like I said before, I think most folks are completely oblivious to that. What else can I do for work as someone approaching 40, or what is someone approaching 50 or 60 nearing retirement who's not ready for it going to do? What skills do they have or do I have that AI doesn't have? That skill gap is going to diminish increasingly fast in the coming decades. Do I have enough money in the bank to cover, the period of time I'm out of work, trying to figure out what my next step may be? The average savings account in the United States is less than $1,000. I don't know how many people that represents that will be displaced by AI, but it's not going to be much time to pivot. And I don't know that there's any safeguards going to be put in place when that time comes for folks like that. And while I have, tried to plan well for the future, it's I can keep my head above water for a short period of time, but it's not indefinite. So, what else can I do for work? Could the next step be not working at all? I don't know. The reality is more than likely that I'll need to transition to an entirely different trade or profession in my early to mid to late 40s. Many of us will. AI is going to seriously humble most of us and strip a large part of our identity away from us. And while I think losing work entirely in the long run and not having that daily purpose will lead to harm of our self-worth or our identities, my immediate concern is fiscal, right? How do I feed my family? It gets really basic at that point when you don't have a job or prospects for a job are diminished. So how are we going to deal with that? Those are questions a lot of people are going to be asking. So many, if not all of us at some point, will be forced to reinvent ourselves in the coming years to stay relevant in what will be an ever-shrinking workforce. Even if we somehow manage to successfully reinvent ourselves, how long will that last? AI is only going to keep advancing. So this sounds as difficult as it probably will be. It is my view that AI won't discriminate against white collar or blue collar, but I think white collar jobs are much more susceptible in the short term. Most of us work for the bulk of time that we're awake, or it seems that way at least. And to significantly alter that work or remove it altogether, it will test us. I'd have to say there's a particular interview that alarmed me, came across back in 2019, I think it was, from Kai-Fu Lee, who's a computer scientist by trade. At least that's how he started. He became a leader, I think the initial leader for Google Asia, and he's pivoted and he's working exclusively in AI at this point. And in 2019, now 4 years ago, he predicted that 40% of jobs in the world would be displaced by AI within 15 years. So 2034, 40% of jobs in the world would be displaced by AI within 15 years, or at the very least displaceable. 40%, that's huge, and it's hard to even wrap your mind around that being something that could happen. But if you look at recent developments within the last 5 to 6 months in AI, and at least what's been released as it relates to AI, 40% seems plausible, which is frightening. So Kai-Fu Lee, he has what I feel is a more negative yet realistic outlook as it relates to AI and job displacement. Technologists or futurists typically qualify their statements or comments on AI replacing human workers by saying that mankind has, faced these sorts of changes before and new work is always created. Kai-Fu Lee states in his book, and I'll put a link in the show notes for that book, that AI's employment impact is not one of job creation, but of job replacement. Displaced workers can theoretically transition into other industries that are more difficult to automate, but this is a highly disruptive process that will take a long time. The magnitude of coming change as it relates to AI is still hard to grasp for me. I've been reading on it for a decade or so because it's so abstract. For that reason, I wanted to try to put some historical context around what AI could potentially do to our current world, or the magnitude of what it will do to our current world. So let's talk about some historical examples. There are very few events in history that mark time or change the way we speak and live. 9/11 fits this bill insofar as it changed the way we view security and travel. But I'm thinking much bigger. Let's think about Jesus for a second. We mark our time and place in history by the life of Jesus. If time for the world is based on your life, I think it's fair to say you're a pretty big deal. So Jesus had whether you agree or not, Jesus had a huge impact on the world. But let's take an event closer to our time in history. So World War II, it was such a monumental event that those from that time typically referred to their lives as before the war, during the war, and after the war. It was such a profound event in their lives that it defined their life story. I think AI is going to be a similar event. Or let's think about someone born in 1850 in the United States and they lived to 1945. Think about everything they would have witnessed being alive at that time before, during, and after the Second Industrial Revolution. The invention of trains, planes, automobiles, talking pictures, the telephone, a civil war, 2 world wars. It was quite the time to be alive. AI has the potential to dwarf that change. It's here on our doorstep, and it's only gaining steam. It can't be overstated. So questions that I think about that I think we're all going to start thinking about pretty soon is like, I have a daughter. She's 4 currently, will she ever work at a job or drive a car? I think driving a car is less likely, probably. But will she ever work? I don't know. Maybe. 10 years ago, that might have seemed like a silly question, but most technologists or futurists would say that that's a valid question. Or I live in a college town, and I can't help but think about the students, in particular majors at this very moment, whose professions won't exist in a few years. So who knows how much debt they're taking out to be learning this thing that will not be around in 3 to 5 to 10 years. That's difficult to wrap your head around. And as hard as it may be, I am an optimist. So much so that it annoys my wife. I'm working hard to be an optimist as it relates to AI, but it's difficult. I don't think this world will ever experience utopia, as some suggest AI will bring about, but I think far into the future, the world could be a much better place as a result of AI. I'm more concerned with the interim. The interim is going to show a huge portion of the population facing joblessness at the hands of AI. There's been no shortage of articles or podcasts on the subject since December and the release of ChatGPT. It's been difficult to keep up with the volume of material being written about AI and its potential impact on work. Technologists, futurists, talking heads all range from extreme to minimal when it comes to AI's impact on work. Again, it's all speculation. No one knows what the future holds. Even those who think the impact on work will be minimal still think that there are professions that could disappear in the short term. And if you're looking for more technical resources on this subject, AI in general, this is probably not the show for you. There's certainly podcasts that can provide that for you. Hard Fork from the New York Times, the Lex Friedman podcast, the Ezra Klein show are some great podcasts that are worth mentioning. And I'll link to those in the show notes. About the show title, the podcast title, I thought about the subject of work a great deal. When you sit at a desk for 40 plus hours a week, you've got a lot of time to think about your place in the world and the value you bring into it. We all want to be successful in work, and many of us have tried to climb our way up the ladder, and we would certainly be devastated to see our jobs replaced by AI. Work and the subject of work is so immense that I wanted to raise the alarm of the potential of AI takeover in our work and to talk about what that actually looks like. I think having the conversation now can better prepare us for that. And then I had an idea for a podcast where AI would be sort of a secondary or tertiary subject, and the meaning of work would be more the focus. That was sort of how I saw this coming together. But the past few months and the developments in the past few months have made me see that AI will be the rule and not the exception in the future. The name of this podcast is AI Coming for Your Job. It's probably a little too on the nose, but it does serve the purpose. I think the answer to that question, is AI coming for your job, is yes, absolutely, it's coming. It's just really a matter of when. So Who is this show for? I think it's for people like me, meaning non-technical folks with an interest and fear in AI and what it means for our future. So I think in the very near future, more and more people are going to start to be interested in this subject as it will directly impact them and their livelihoods. So this podcast is meant for folks like myself, those of us who are going to be impacted, if not replaced by AI in the short term. In addition to the topic of AI and your work, I think we'll also chat about AI's impact on life in general. I think we'll talk about corporate life, office politics, as I'm involved in that every day, and the state of work as it is. It could very well be that AI eliminates the worst parts of corporate life before it eliminates corporate life altogether. Let's hope so. Which brings up another point altogether. Current white-collar work is a relatively new invention. So, who's to say that that's a good thing? I do it every day, and I'm not convinced that it is. Outside of the monetary benefits and the benefits of my home life that it provides, it's not rewarding in the sense that it feeds your soul. It does give you purpose, but it lacks that thing that working with your hands gives you. Perhaps whatever future we move into will make us look at office work like it was the practice of cavemen. A few notes. If you couldn't guess, this is my first podcast. I'm going at this alone with some much needed critiquing and direction from my wife and a few friends. So please bear with me. Hopefully these will improve as we go. This is not a business venture for me. I don't have any grand plans for this show other than discuss this topic that I've been thinking about for years, and I think it's going to impact a great many people moving forward. So obviously I'm not an expert in AI or technical, and I'm sure I'll make that obvious as we go along. I think what's important is I think that I'm a father and a husband and a friend, and I think a great many of our lives are going to be upended in the coming years. So, like I said, we'll be optimistic where we can be optimistic, as I am an optimistic person. But I look forward to working through AI with you and what that means for us in the future. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time.